Hello, everyone. Welcome to Domopalooza 2023. Uh, Today, this breakout session is going to be covering leveraging advanced features to improve alert monitoring and reporting. So with that, I'm James Heckert. I'm a principal digital engineer with Archaea Energy, a BP company in the oil and gas field. We actually are a renewable natural gas company. So today we're going to cover a tiered process of Domo alerts. And what we're going to look at is an arbitrary definition of levels that have been set out for this presentation today. The levels that we have here are basically just to help clearly define and group together different elements of using alerts inside of Domo and to better kind of organize and display these features. So hopefully they'll be better for you to understand as we go through this process. So to get started, we're going to look at getting started with alerts and basically just kind of the initial ground floor of using alerts inside of Domo. With level 2, we'll take one level up and go into dynamic alert mechanisms. And that's going to be to kind of associate your data into a different structure. And for level 3, we're going to look at advanced features that are included with Domo alerts. Now, before we get into actually looking at the levels and doing any of the demos for today, we're going to lay the groundwork for a story and what we're going to focus on for today, just to kind of keep everything contained and have some structure there. So before we get into the first level, we're going to kind of just add on to that layering aspect that we've been talking about and imagine a scenario of a global production company that uses 3 different assembly lines for their operations and define production quotas for each one of those assembly lines. So we're just going to sit in that mindset and keep awareness of this whole framework as we go through with the data that we work with. And another thing that will be worth keeping in mind as we start thinking about alerts is just what would be noteworthy, what kind of information is going to be worthwhile in communicating around alerts along with this data. So to get started, we're going to start looking at creating alerts. And like I said, this will be level 1 for Domo alerts. So getting started with alerts. What we want to do here is take the data that we have. So we're going to be working with production data today. And what we're going to be doing is wanting to understand, why should we create an alert? Why do we need to send alerts? What kind of information is worthwhile to the teams and the people that we're interacting with or working with on a daily basis that should really be vital enough to send off to someone and make them aware of this data and the information that's going on within our company and what we need to do with that information. Do we need to take action? Do we need to investigate things more? Anything of that perspective? And then who needs to receive it? Who should we send these alerts to? Who does this information matter for? So before we get into actually looking at alerts and building them, what we want to do first is just kind of get a picture of the data we're going to be using today. So we have this example data set out here that is of production data, and we're getting hourly increments of production data for 3 different lines of 3 different production lines. So the data we're getting for this information is the amount of downtime per production line per hour, the production quantity, the production quota, and the variation between quota and production. And you'll see we have that for each one of the production lines that we've just labeled line A through C. So that's the data we're going to be working with. And we will now jump over to actually building a card. So to get started and thinking about the concept of the data that we're going to be working with today, we already have a few cards that are built out here for production line data, and I'm going to go into the details and kind of just show So this card is one that we have built out already, and it shows over the last 12 hours each line of production and the downtime minutes for it. So this is something that we could immediately bring in and get some representation for an alert, and give an indication of any item greater than 12 minutes. We can alert on that information. But what I want to call out here is, is this information actually valuable? Is this going to actually provide any kind of real great impact to the business? And then on top of it, this kind of alert with all this data in here for the 3 different lines is actually not dynamic. So all of these different production lines have to meet the same parameter of the alert. And so that might not be something that's going to be effective for communicating or working into your business to make people aware of the downtime that is actually occurring on any one of these production lines. As you can see here, line C has had indications of instances where they've actually had pretty high spikes within 1 hour. So we're going to come back. So now looking at a different perspective of the same kind of data structure for some cards, we've split these production alerts out into their own card, so that way we can track the alerts individually, and we can actually expose the graph and the chart to be a little bit more representative of what we're trying to tell the end users about these alerts. So as you can see, production line A, B, and C all show the quota as a goal and the actual production per hour as we go through. And so the alerts that we're going to want to set on any one of these cards is to give us an indicator when it falls below our quota. So we're going to go ahead and build that alert today for production line C. And so we'll click the alert button and we will add a new alert. And the first thing that is important to do is to give it a title. This is kind of easy to miss because it kind of sits up at the top in a different color, but we're just going to kind of give it a general title today. And then we're going to actually establish the condition on our alert. So we want to choose the metric. We're going to check for most recent hour because of the type of card we're using. And we're also going to look for when it is less than 100, because 100 is the quota that is intended to be met for production line C. Now that that's set, we can actually manipulate the message that is going to be provided. I always like to put alert as the starting word. And we're just going to type out some valuable information that would be worthwhile for notifying someone about this alert on this card. And something Domo allows us to use over here is this metric feature where we can actually insert live data as part of our alert message. So we click next. At this point, this is where you share your alert. So you can provide it to people, groups, whatever fits best. If you don't assign anyone, the alert will just be set to the user that is creating. So now that we have that alert, we'll see that it's actually live out here. And since the last reported production time doesn't meet the alert, there's no trigger. We can go back and look at So now that we created the alert for production line C, we also have alerts on production line B and production line A that have already been created with regard to their goals of 200, 400 apiece. So one thing to point out here is you have the ability to organize your data and get it structured and presented in a card that would be more valuable to you to see whether or not your alert is actually trending or displaying well against a goal or whatever condition that is set for your alert. But what you'll notice here too is we've now had to create 3 separate cards and 3 separate alerts to produce the information we're wanting to provide. So there is one other option that we have for establishing an alert with all of our information, knowing that we have multiple conditions at play. So we can actually build one card that has all the production information along with it, and we can establish all of those alerts within that one card. And this gives us the opportunity to manage these alerts all in one place. If we ever need to make modifications or change the recipients of these alerts, we can do it all from here. But once again, I would like to point out that using this type of card and display and this use of alerts, it's worthwhile in the sense of making some of this a little bit more seamless, but at the same time, the card isn't really providing great information. What we're trying to look into here is whether or not the production line A is meeting the quantity or the quota that is expected, and that's the same for both production line C and B. But right here, like this card is simply just kind of comparing the productivity together. So if for whatever reason these production lines had no bearing on each other, this card really doesn't do much for giving that information. It basically just gave us a path to set alerts on in one location. So concluding for level 1 alerts, getting started with alerts, what I want to make sure that everyone's aware of is, we can create alerts for all aspects of our data. Anything that, we can seamlessly like dream up or we have data for, we can establish alerts for that. What's going to be important is, planning what is important around your data and understanding the business and the logic and what matters to people. So going into, looking into your data and establishing alerts for it, it might just require discussions and getting involved with the business to understand better of what you want to present to them and what's going to be meaningful to them and what you should be, notifying them with so that, you don't run the risk of over notifying people of data inside your Domo instance. In addition to that, when alert parameters differ, we either have to create separate alerts, separate cards, which can make time management and stuff difficult on those that are actually owning those alerts or producing them. So just to keep that in the back of your mind while you're trying to produce alerts and things for your data, every alert you create potentially has the aspect of needing to be reconfigured or repurposed based off the changes in business. So the question I'd like to ask is, are we constrained to this reality? The answer is no. Domo also offers some additional functionality across its application to be able to create what's called dynamic alert mechanisms. And this is level 2. And essentially, we're going to reimagine those limitations that we ran into in level 1. So dynamic alert mechanisms and constructing your data for alerts. So what features do we have to use to our advantage inside of Domo? So Domo offers quite a few different aspects of data transformation. Some of the easier ones are beast mode and ETL, but depending on your skill set and capacity, you can essentially use anything from the kind of data and transform side to create dynamic alert mechanisms. One thing to keep in mind is how your data is constructed initially. So you might have to make some changes there, but overall, using ETL, which is one of the more simpler methods, you can basically create a dynamic alert mechanism and leverage that to enhance your data and your reporting on alerts. So what is a dynamic alert mechanism? Essentially that your data has met some kind of condition, and that is what is going to be the basis for your alert. So why should we implement these triggers? The most obvious reason is it allows us to establish alerts inside our data that is going to continue to live moving forward in our data. So now I'm going to show you how to build a dynamic alert mechanism. So now looking back at our data set, we can actually come to the ETL tool, Magic ETL, and we can bring that data set in, and we can establish the alert conditions that we were looking at previously inside of a card. So what we're setting up here is the trigger and the condition that we want to establish our alert mechanism on. And so what we're walking through here is associating the production quantity with the production quota for the production line. And we're going to associate it to ones and zeros, basically stating the case that when the value is below the quota, then it is a 1. Otherwise, it will remain a 0. And so this will be our flag for our alert trigger. And we're going to go ahead and create that for the other 2 lines as well. So now that we have all production trigger alerts for our production lines completed, there's actually a few more steps that we need to do to organize our data in the structure that we want it. So we have all this information to unpivot. So essentially what we're doing is we're going to create some new columns to get our data all grouped together into like categories, and then just select those columns from here and then merge all that information back together, essentially to have it in this state in the end where we have our hourly production recordings along with each line under one category and the triggers for those alerts when they occur, along with the same data that we saw previously, but now it's just kind of reorganized into better structure for us to work with. Now that the Domopalooza ETL dataset exists from our data flow, we can actually look at doing alerts from our dataset. So now that we have the dynamic alert mechanisms built inside of our data, we actually have the option to build or to establish alerts off of our data sets. So what we can do here is when any row is added, changed, or deleted. So you have a few options here. We're just going with added. So anytime basically new data comes in that meets the condition of the production trigger when it's equal to 1. So that's how we established our triggers inside of our data set. This will be set to create an alert. and we can identify our alerts based off of the production line and when that alert occurred. So that way we're getting those aspects as distinguishing the one alert from the other. And you notice this is kind of all the same kind of build out that you would have saw from before. You set the alert and you create the message along with it. In addition to the data set alert, we can actually then extend the same alert mechanism to our cards as well as we were doing before. So we'll build from the new data flow data set. All right. So to get started here, we're going to name our card. Once again, this is going to be an alert card, so we're going to name it as such. So I like to use kind of symbols and stacked bars because it gives an element of showing both or multiple elements of your data. So we're going to bring in the line so we can have categories of the production, the different production lines. And we're going to find production trigger, set that for our y-axis, and then we're going to create the series on line variants. So one thing we'll want to do is restrain our data set to look just at the last hour. So that way we can establish our alert basically for every hour continuous. While this reports and new data comes in, it will be able to capture that specific time period and give an alert if it triggered. So what we'll notice here is we have the alert trigger giving the indicator, but then on top of it, this card is also showing us the variance between the quota and the production quantity during that hour. So now that we have this, we can build an alert off of this new data set. And the one thing that you're going to notice after we name it is that we have a much simpler method of establishing the alert. So this is all we have to do to create the rule. Is any item in here is equal to 1, and we now have our alert. And using the information from the metric list, we can actually have it call out which item is actually triggering the alert at any specific time, or if there's multiple alerts triggering the alert at any given time. So we'll just modify this a little bit. And what I like to do for these dynamic alerts like this is when there's multiple results that can occur, is put in kind of like a legend. And so we can just say, give out the conditions that establish the alert for each production line. And then down here, I don't always go with the full rule for the alert, but I do like to give the card name. And the nice thing about getting the buzz alerts to your email or whatever, this information also makes it easy to come back in and view the actual card and alert. So once again, you get the option to share. We'll just save. And now we have alert for a level 2. Now we have an alert for a level 2 with a dynamic alert mechanism. So in conclusion, level 2 alerts, dynamic alert mechanisms. We showed you how to build a dynamic alert mechanism and how it balances out your alert conditions. So in any new established dynamic alert column, that data is then readily available to report an alert for multiple different functions of your business. So what we saw was any production line that we've been reviewing in this scenario could throw an alert and be easily triggered to display alert and push an alert to end users, teams, businesses that would be impacted by it. By creating the dynamic alert mechanisms, we expand the card's alert capabilities, and we also can then utilize data set alerts where we can actually capture a full data record when an alert occurs within the data. And we reduce the quantity of alerts that we have to create and allow us to display more data inside those cards that we're creating as we build out those alerts. So not only do you need to just create a card that has one element of your data to it, we can actually do kind of multiple forms and still use that information to create alerts and actually tell a better story inside that card. So once again, is this the peak of the functionality of alerts inside of Domo? And the answer is still no. So now we'll get into advanced alert features, level 3. And so we can achieve just a little bit more with features that Domo has inside of alerts. So level 3, advanced alert features, and leveraging the developer tools that exist inside of Domo and alerts. So what we're going to be looking at here is webhooks. And essentially, webhook is a capability to transition data from one web application to another. So essentially, if you want Domo to share your alert data with any other tools like communication tools or databases, things like that, you can actually make that happen and do that within your alert. So why would we want to send alerts to other web applications? Essentially, what we're looking to do is just meet the business where it's at. Look to get information more quickly and more seamlessly to those that are needing it and those that require it for their the aspect of their work. And so this helps, trigger action rather than someone to come out and look for information. So how do we get the information we want from this action? So once again, we're back at the data set for the ETL data flow we created, and we're going to come to alerts. and look at that same alert that we already had out here from before, where we were giving the condition of a production trigger equal to 1. And down here, there's an option within your alert inside the data set, as well as cards, where you can create an action. And from here, you can create either a task in Domo to initiate action by users, or you can create this webhook. Now, to use webhooks, basically you have to be working with other web applications, and you'll need a URL to communicate from Domo to that other web application. So this is a step where you'll want to maybe work with a developer, or if you're already aware of kind of a way to build that out, you can generate a URL using other tools and bring that in to create the association. But once you have that, then you basically make your connection between Domo and that other application, and you can use, or you can push your alert information. So I'm going to go back to the one that we already have built. As you can see, it has the URL already. And then down below, the webhook request has some information and stuff here. And then the body, which is what's going to be important to you as you use this feature. So Domo is using basically JSON language to establish a couple objects in here, the name of your alert and the message. And the message is what you're going to basically extend into what you want it to be as your own. So once again, you may want to work with a developer, or if you already have that skill set, or just need to maybe go out and research some information on how to code a message in JSON. But you can do that down here in this box. And what you can see that we've done on this one is we've essentially taken all the data elements from the message preview and just restructured it into a format that's kind of like a tabular output, or like a data set as well, where we're defining each name of each of the data elements. This is the alert name, and then the name of the different elements of the record that were that are meeting the alert trigger. And we're establishing the value here with it using this list of items here. So when you're working with data sets, you actually get access to much more elements of your data in the live data piece, where you can, any column that exists there, you can pull in here. So on top of using the data set alerts and running a webhook that way, which would be kind of more for sending your data to different applications that would want to store information from it and use it as part of their application. Maybe you're thinking about your production data, in this case of like downtime or issues or something, and maybe you want to report something to a quality assurance group for maintenance reasons, anything of those kind of aspects. You could do that and actually share data from Domo. But another type we can create is from a card, which could be used more for a communication perspective. So we're going back to the same card that we created in level 2, when any item is equal to 1, and we have our message that comes along with it. Once again, we're using kind of the same perspective for configuring a webhook. And down here at the bottom, as part of our message, we're just establishing a communication version of the alert, rather than in the data set where you actually kind of can spell out the actual record. This is more of a communication perspective and definition to shoot out to your teams and those that are going to need this information. So when I was speaking before about using different tools and things, meeting your business where they exist. So if your company is using communication tools such as Teams or Slack or anything of that nature, you can actually generate these webhooks to push your messages to groups or teams or channels, people that are using those tools over there. And that might be more apt to get the information more quickly than they would be using another tool. So once again, like I said, it's basically just the message that we pulled in from the established alert, recreating it over here. And when we save it, so now whenever this alert triggers, we can actually see an example of Teams sending a message to a user. And so in the example that I'm using here, I just used Power Automate Flow. That's the URL that I was using to produce the webhook, so we can make the connection. And you'll see that my alert name exists here at the top, along with the alert message below it, telling me that production line B last production hour was below target. And I also know that that means it was below 400. And so, like I said, these could be used in many different scenarios. And this is just one that I've worked with in the past. So to conclude, level 3 and advanced alert features, the main points of emphasis that I want to communicate here is that you get a much greater outreach. You can actually communicate messages and alerts to the teams and the businesses that are working with your data or that need to be aware of your data a little bit more seamlessly, and you're reaching them where they're working, where they're doing business. And so to extend that as well, Domo is offering you a business intelligence tool that is integrated deeply with your data and alerts and the things that trigger your alerts to actually push those details to your teams, your people, those that need to take action and make or change the outcomes of how the business is currently performing. And so what these advanced features are really doing is driving opportunities off of these actions. So that way, they're the individuals that need to be aware of this data, that need to perform job functions from this data, need to communicate this data, need to get involved to make sure that productivity is being met, can actually do this much more quickly and at a much more effective capacity, rather than coming to a tool like Domo for reviewing reported data and then trying to make decisions on what they should be doing. So once again, the question that I've been stemming off a lot of these conclusions is just to think more about what this could mean for your business or where you work, and how these type of actions can elevate business. I mean, really, it's all comes back down to the data you have at your fingertips and what you can bring into Domo. But once you've established alerts or information that you want to make people aware of, the possibilities are kind of endless on the ability to take that to the next step and make more people aware of it more quickly. So in conclusion, what we are taking away from today is essentially the importance of planned alerts, evaluating what is important to your company, what data is important, what business decisions are important, what needs to be answered, the problems that need to be solved, and just, taking all those perspectives into consideration when you're creating alerts or working with your data, making sure you're, like I said, not overloading people with alerts and getting exactly what the business wants. The impact of data indicators, so the dynamic alert mechanisms, focusing on creating and extending aspects of your data to establish alerts and details and allow that information to live within your data moving forward. So you basically are creating historical records of the alerts themselves as well. And then advanced features and how they help drive action by your business by more seamlessly integrating those features into tools and systems that people are using on a daily basis to where they don't have to come out and search for it, but it's just handed over to them. So once again, how far can this go? Try to think about different ways and perspectives to apply this to what you do within your company. This is just only kind of the way that I've found my way through it. But I think that the possibilities are endless, and it just depends on where companies want to go with it. So with that, thank you. That's my presentation, and thank you for attending my breakout session.